for inviting me here. It's a great honor and pleasure. And I'm very happy to see such a lively group of audience here. When the first Englishman arrived in India, there were a lot of people in the villages who were also very sensitive to the fact that there is a white man entering our town. And in the village in Rajasthan, the men and the women from the local community got together and discussed the previous evening as to how they could probably evade this man from entering their village. The barber, who was a very wise person, said, "I think I can take care of this if you trust me." All the people agreed. His wife made him a good meal at night. And then he slept. He slept well. He was not disturbed. The next morning, bright and early, there was a beautiful orange streak in the sky, like a scratch. It was the beginning of dawn, and the sky slowly became a reddish yellow. And just as it was turning a golden yellow, the barber was all ready with his equipments in his little small village barber shop. Now they were very sure that the British gentleman is a prim and proper person, and he would definitely come first to the barbers. So there comes the British man. So the English gentleman entered his shop and said, "All right, I'm ready for a shave." And so the barber put on a little white sheet on him and said, "All right, here we go." And as he was doing this, the British man saw something on the side. He saw a needle and thread. And he said, "Just a minute. What's that needle and thread doing in your shop?" He said, "Sir, sometimes, this knife not very good because village knife. So when I'm shaving, sometimes little cuts. So that time, this needle and thread to stitch. It won't be painful. We all do that." Man was getting a little afraid. He said, "Oh, I see. I hope you can give a proper shave." And then he said, "All right, go on." And just as he was about to begin, he saw a bow and an arrow. He said, "Just a minute. I can understand the needle and thread, but what about the bow and arrow?" He said, "Sir, I told you. See, that cut, no, it will not be even. Sometimes the cut is little deep and the flesh hanging out. That time these crows coming and then pecking. So that time I use bow and arrow to drive them." See, gosh, but I have to go on. I said, come on. And then on the side, suddenly he saw a dagger. And he said, "What is this dagger doing here?" He said, "Sir, the inevitable. When I do the cutting, sometimes too deep, then between death and life, very difficult. So only one shot." So then the Englishman said, "Oh, I don't think I'm going to shave. I don't think I want to enter this village at all." And that's how he left that village. Now this was just to, after listening to you all, I was just thinking, there are stories which are humorous, which are real, and which also has a little bit of satire and political freedom to it. Now, political or economic, most stories, if you see, they came out of an economic and political background. If you look at Alice in Wonderland or Aesop's fables, for instance. Fables, very short stories. And most of them are having a moral, you know. I know that these days we only tell the moral and we don't concentrate on the story. And that becomes very boring. So the moral was mainly meant to give a message. So Aesop was a black slave. And again, you know, tied up on a high, big cliff, and very sadistic minister would not allow him to drink water. So there was an old well from which the water would come up, and he would look at the water and it would be dropped back. So now Aesop was an intelligent man. How is he going to convince the king that his minister is a sadist? Yes? Plus the food that was only given as a ration was also taken away by the minister. All of them were chained. The king would come sometimes on a visit, but you can't have a direct access to the king at all, right? And anything you told the king, he would be beheaded. So how is he going to bring this message to the king? Now, just as the king is coming, he starts the story. Once upon a time, there was a crow. Very thirsty. And he's so thirsty that he rests for a while waiting for water. But there's no water because everything is dried up. Everything is so dry that he can't find a drop of water. And then someone keeps a pot of water. And so he goes towards the pot. Peeps in. Very little water. Looks around. Clever crow. Looks at the pebbles. Drops. The water comes up. Bloop, 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 bloop. Drinks the water and flies away happily. As he was narrating the story, the king stopped because the sounds were very enticing. He looked at this person who was narrating this story, and then he went away. And the next day, when he came again, curious, just to listen to the stories, Aesop continued. Once upon a time there was a fox. Whoa! And the fox was a very cunning fox. He sat under this tree and told the crow, "You have such a lovely voice." And now the crow, believing what the fox said, "Do you think so?" And there dropped his cheese. And the fox ran away with the piece of cheese. Wonderful story. Third day. There was a lion roaring and went and got the rat. The rat said, "Please don't eat me. I'll help you someday. Please, just trust me." "All right. Should I?" "Yes, please, please." So the rat ran away. Another day, the rat goes back home. Mother says, "You are panting and puffing." "Mommy, today I was almost going to be gobbled up. But you see, the lion seemed to be a nice-hearted person. Let me go." "Maybe you should help that lion." "Yes, I think I will. But I don't know how." So another day. "Ah!" Loud sounds. Caught in the net. "Yes, that's my friend." The rat comes running and says, "Ah! Wait, if you make too much noise, I can't help you." "All right, tell me." "Shh, quiet." "Okay,
All right. Trust me? Yes, of course. Let me think. All right.
Bites the net. There comes out the lion.
Thank you very much. You can climb on me, you can jump, you can do what you like.
And they became very good friends. The king was very happy. Aha! Now I get it. The big lion and the little mouse. Power positions. The cunning fox and the black crow. Why should only a crow feel thirsty? Intelligent and wise king. So he put the puzzle together and he got the answer. The slave was trying to tell him something. That the lion was the king, the fox was the minister, and the slave was the rat and the crow. He came the next day and asked Esau, "What would you like? I know you're trying to tell me something. Tell me what you want." He said, "I want all of us to be freed." And he got freedom, not only for himself, but for everyone. And that was the power of stories. Yes? So, stories have been there. Stories will continue in the future. And we are surrounded all the time with stories. Stories of gossip. Yes, the fastest, the best, the rumors, you can't beat them at all. Sensationalization today, the media, the television, they all encash on that. So gossip, rumors, talking across the walls, through the emails, chat, Facebook, you can't beat them. You cannot but communicate. We cannot be islands. We need to communicate. And a lot of us have heard other people's stories. We have listened to other people's stories. If we haven't listened, then we wouldn't be writing books, we wouldn't be creating characters. And this is the only field where the storyteller and the listener are on the same platform, where you have active listening. There are more than 40 types of listening. But this is a very active field where the listening is not passive, it's not half listening, it is not selective listening, but there's complete listening. And because storytelling is a sequence of events which evokes the curiosity of the listener, what happens next? What happens next? And then he walked and walked and walked and walked. It was a dark jungle. And he walked and walked and walked and walked. And there was a little light. So he opened. And then he started to climb. He saw something. Now we don't know what he saw. But it's just that something that evokes the curiosity. It evokes a sense of wonder. It evokes an emotion in us. Stories are emotional. They're not about the head, they are about the heart. And heart listening. And that's why stories are so beautiful. Shah Rukh Khan, hanging from the helicopter. Last scene in the movie. Yes? And the villain trying to. And he's one hand off. Only one hand. Right? Again the villain drops both. But where will he land? On a lorry full of hay. And then, suddenly, the villains know that he has landed on this hay. So when he gets down, 5 villains from this side. Yeah, and then dishum. Then from the left side. Then from the back side. Runs into the factory. Dabbas fall. Yeah? So 20 people knocked. And then he has fought So there will be little blood. So he wakes up, and then there's a bridge, and then Raj, the heroine coming from the other end. And then there'll be a hugging, and he'll do kuch kuch hota hai. End. Now nobody will get up and say that's not true. Right? We all know, and even if someone gets up and says that's not true, they say, hey, what's your problem? Sit down. So you see, that's the power. So we are ready to suspend our disbelief and believe in something which is not true. That is the power. That's why so many movies, house full, innumerable PVR centers full. Yeah, so almost like babies, we produce films today. So stories have traveled, stories have also traveled. They have also had a journey. Earlier, the shortest bridge between being and communicating was a story. Tales around the fire. Ivattu ಏನಾಯ್ತು ಗೊತ್ತಾ? That's how stories were, isn't it? So I was walking in the forest. ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಆನೆ ಬಂತು. ಆಮೇಲೆ? Yeah? So it was loud. It had a lot of action, gestures, yes, and no inhibition. It was not analyzed. It was pure. It was around the fire with no agenda. Yeah? Simple sharing of tales. So the simple sharing of tales became what later on came to be known as folk tales. Simple F-O-L-K, folk people tales. And the folk tales, if you see even today, only the animals might have changed. Like, why? How did the kangaroo get a pouch? Yeah? So, how and why were the questions answered? Because the first man was very, very curious. He had a mixed emotion of fear, curiosity, sense of wonder, and a lot of mixed things. When he heard a sound or when he got a smell, he was out in the open, he was a wanderer. He had to battle that. So most of the stories were shared. When it was shared, it healed them. Yeah? So each one had a story of why you should climb a tree when an elephant comes, or what should you do when a tiger comes closer to you. Recently, I went to Orissa. I do a lot of workshop for tribals, and 35 tribal people were there. And one of them was narrating a story to me saying that, you know, about 5 years ago, when I came out of my house to cut wood, because my mother wanted to cook. So when I went out to cut wood, I was confronted by a wolf, and it had its tongue like this, he showed, hanging out. So I didn't know what to do. I climbed a tree immediately, and that was the first time I learned to climb a tree. I was so happy. So this is 21st century. Man is still learning to climb trees. Can you believe this? So we have that the stories that started then were like this. When you go into groups, you'll find different kinds of stories. So folk tales were very natural, with a lot of gestures, loud, shared, and almost all the folk tales around the world were almost the same way. After the printed word came about, that's when fairy tales began. All the fantasy and triggering the imagination, that's what they say. So the fantasy and the fairy tales began after that. So a lot of them, because of the fantasy element, captured the imagination of children, people around the world, than the oral tradition of just speaking and telling a tale. And then we have legends, epics, we have myths, we have beautiful stories, we have parallel tales. You will have a different tale over here as to how the peacock got its eyes. Yeah? It's a beautiful story. And it's about, and then there were like transformation stories, or how the peacock came to be. So many things like this. So we have parallel tales from around the world. We have tales from everywhere. So I just want to say it's a long journey. Once you start diving into this ocean of stories, maybe you will find a pearl at the end of it. So I just created one story recently because it has to stem from you. Saw a little dewdrop, and you are always at the crossroads, who you are. What am I? Am I a wife, a mother, or I'm a storyteller, a trainer? Who are you? So this little dewdrop goes home, and then it wants a color. So it sees this sunflower. The sunflower says, oh, don't even come near me. I'm the only one who can face the sun. It travels on, and then can get a lovely smell. But as soon as the dewdrop enters, it is a lot of things poke it from all sides. Do you know which flower that is? That pokes the rose. So the rose doesn't even say anything, just action. So then it moves on, and then it's almost the evening, sees the beautiful lotus, he wants to go towards the lotus. The lotus says, don't even come here, you'll dissolve. And then it looks up and looks at this faded blue, purple flower, who's almost crying, saying, I myself fade with the day. What can I give you? And now the dewdrop loses hope. It travels on, almost given up hope when she hears, hey, I can see the full moon in you. What? The dewdrop looks around, where is this sound coming from? And it's this beautiful jasmine. And the jasmine says, come on. You know, it's so beautiful. I can see the full moon. You know, if you hop onto me, you'll become like me. You can take my color, my smell. And when you hop onto the sunflower, you can take that color. You are so lucky. You can be what you like. Why are you looking for your identity? I cannot be the sunflower. The sunflower cannot be the rose. The rose cannot be the purple flower. So we're all fixed. You are so flexible. So be happy with what you are. So I thought I got an answer. That in this whole wandering, it was nice to have, because storytellers are wanderers at heart. Maybe we don't have an identity really, we don't have a color, a smell. We adapt as we go along, spreading stories, sharing stories, believing in stories, and hoping that the universe is made up of stories and not atoms.